Men's rights activists routinely get told by feminists to shut up based on the claim that feminists are already working on men's issues. Feminists blame men's issues on their pet conspiracy theory, otherwise known as patriarchy. Many of them cite a list that originated in a post by Lindy West on Gawker Media's Jezebel blog titled, "If I admit that man-hating is a thing, will you stop turning it into a self-fulfilling prophecy?" Well, that sounds like a promising source to explain what feminism is doing to benefit men, doesn't it? One issue on Lindy's list is child custody. Feminists blame patriarchy, citing the belief that women are better caregivers. There's only one problem with that claim. Use of the legal presumption that women are naturally better caregivers as a determining factor in the decision on child custody originated with 19th century feminist Carolyn Norton. Norton's activism in this area was a response to a problem feminists today deny exists: parental alienation. She was kept away from her children by her husband, who had full custody and total control over her ability to see them. This was due to the fact that upon separation or divorce from a marriage, early English common law gave custody to the father. Upon finding out she had no legal recourse to change her situation, Norton began fighting to change the law. Today's custody law evolved from two of Norton's writings, the Custody of Infants Act of 1893 and her plain letter to the Lord Chancellor regarding that bill. In these writings, Norton argued that women are naturally better caregivers, and that children need the attention of their mother more than they need the attention of their father during the early years of their childhood. Because of the relationship between English common law and U.S. law, when this was adopted as law in the UK, it also became the basis for the tender years doctrine in the U.S., which codified into law the idea that maternal custody is in the best interest of young children. This doctrine has since been replaced in U.S. law by the best interest of the child doctrine, but application of the best interest of the child doctrine is still heavily influenced and informed by decades of having used the tender years doctrine. Young kids are presumed better off with mom unless there are extenuating circumstances. Because of this, the shared custody schedule is basically the same thing as a maternal custody schedule with paternal visitation, except with some additional legal rights like making medical decisions and educational decisions, but often in theory only. After all, how is a dad supposed to make informed medical or educational decisions for a child he's only allowed to interact with 4 days a month? Fathers' rights groups have introduced bills in various states which would make the default in uncontested divorce cases 50-50 custody, so that when there's no issue to address, children could benefit from equal time with both parents. Because it applies only to uncontested cases, such a bill would not affect custody battles. It would only protect children from being routinely denied contact with their fathers. In direct contradiction to West's claim that feminists do not want fathers to lose custody of their children, every time one of these bills is introduced, feminist organizations mobilize against it. Now, they can't beat these bills by debating honestly the merits of equally shared parenting. So, to keep them down, feminists lie. First, they lie about the bill's parameters and stipulations. With feminist lobbying organizations which frequently discuss legislation and must therefore understand the terms contained within it, misrepresenting bills with application limited to uncontested cases as if they are every case mandates. They lie about fathers as a group, portraying them without evidence or context as all deadbeats and abusers. For the record, U.S. Health Department statistics contradict feminists on abuse in two ways. They show that the majority of perpetrators in child maltreatment cases have consistently been women. And, during the last several years, as paternal custody has increased, they show a decrease in overall abuse. These statistics don't show a dramatic difference. They aren't presented here as an indictment of women, but they do directly contradict the assumption that child abuse is a male behavior and the automatic treatment of fathers as a danger to their children. They contradict the feminist narrative on paternal custody. Available information also contradicts feminist deadbeat claim. Historically, even when fathers had custody, divorced mothers were not held financially responsible. Feminists' attitude is predicated on presuming it right to consider fathers more financially liable for their children than mothers. In other words, they're relying on a traditional gender role, holding fathers to the household provider role. Child support in English common law didn't even originate in response to divorce, but instead with England's poor laws going back to the 14th century. It was a means of recouping the state's expense for supporting unwed mothers and their children, a means for protecting the state from financial drain, not of protecting children from poverty. It only became part of divorce due to the flip to maternal custody, so it has always been a benefit reserved for women in the state, not a product of concern or consideration for the child. It was only during the latter half of the 20th century that applying child support law to mothers became anywhere near standard, and census data shows that even this is done unevenly. Obligation is assigned to a lower percentage of non-custodial mothers than non-custodial fathers. It's also a lower amount on average when it's assigned to mothers. And yet, on average, fathers who are owed child support receive a smaller percentage of what is owed to them than do mothers who are owed child support. This despite the fact that imputed income, that is, income higher than the father actually brings in, is often used by caseworkers and judges to artificially inflate non-custodial fathers' child support obligations. Custodial fathers are also more likely to keep jobs or maintain other independent sources of income than custodial mothers, despite having the same conditions that mothers cite as reasons why they can't. This is likely due in large part to the fact that it has always been expected of them. So, non-custodial fathers are paying a higher percentage of an assigned debt that represents a higher percentage of their income than that owed or paid by mothers in the same situation, while custodial mothers are relying on support from an ex-spouse for a higher percentage of their income than fathers are relying on in that same situation. In short, statistically, mothers are much better at being deadbeats than fathers are. Feminists have also lied about fathers' rights groups, claiming they don't care about kids and are just trying to get divorced dads out of paying child support. Once again, the evidence contradicts this lie. Census data shows a statistical increase in percentage of support paid if the non-custodial parent has contact with the child, even more so if there is joint physical or legal custody as opposed to a custody visitation agreement. If groups like the National Organization for Women really cared about financial benefits to the child, they wouldn't be opposing an increase in paternal custody. Beneath feminism's lie about money is a lie of omission, the inference that money is the only thing about a dad that matters. Research gathered from independent sources and compiled and evaluated by the Father Involvement Initiative shows numerous ways in which children benefit from involvement with their fathers. During the tender years, for instance, when the court considers them unimportant, a father's involvement leads to better ability to handle strange or stressful situations, better problem-solving ability, and better ability to relate to others. Kids with involved fathers perform better academically, show more involvement with their academic community, and have fewer discipline issues. They also have fewer social issues and are more likely to resolve them without seeking a teacher's assistance. Father involvement also makes kids less likely to go along with other children in making choices that will get them into trouble. As they get older, kids with involved fathers have better school attendance and are more likely to graduate. This trend continues through post-secondary education and is noted to affect career success and psychological well-being. This means they're less likely to end up in poverty and end up needing government financial aid. Kids of involved fathers grow up to be more tolerant of others and to be more likely to have successful marriages and long-term friendships. They're less likely to engage in self-destructive behaviors such as truancy, substance abuse, or criminal activity. They're less likely to end up in jail. They're less likely to become unwed parents. They're less likely to experience depression, anxiety issues, or risk of being abused. And they're less likely to commit suicide. Again, none of this is intended as a slight against mothers. It only shows that kids need both parents, a factor ignored by feminist complaints against fathers' rights groups, and information you'd think feminists would be promoting if it were true that they don't want fathers to lose custody of their kids. And come to think about it, even if the focus of feminism is not on children's interests, but women's, these groups should still be promoting cooperative co-parenting rather than fighting to keep custody from fathers. Imagine the benefit to mothers if they could bring themselves to do that. Every good mother wants to see her child have healthy friendships, do well in school, stay out of trouble, and work toward a happy, socially fulfilling, financially comfortable, and well-adjusted adulthood. If an involved father promotes these conditions, wouldn't his involvement save the mother a lot of stress and worry? Wouldn't she be glad to see these things happening for her child, and proud of herself for putting her child's best interests in front of any personal dislike she might have for her ex? Wouldn't it be nice to be in that group of moms who receives more support from the father because he is allowed, even encouraged, to be emotionally invested in his children? Even if feminism only has women's best interests in mind, why would feminist organizations work so hard to sabotage an arrangement that would ultimately benefit women? Is it because, contrary to Lindy West's claims, they hate and oppose fathers, men, so much that they're willing to throw women and children under the bus to hurt them?